Mi kile nilipata hapo, ile sura nilipata hapo, nilichangaa mtu anaweza kufanywa unyama huo na ako hospitali. Sasa kama ni hospitali unafanyiwa hivyo, nani pako na imani? Hiyo uso ni kama ilikuwa inachimbwa na njembe, imeshiba mpaka njicho likachimbwa likatolewa, na hiyo njicho ilikuwa hapo. Mimi niliona hiyo sura na nikakimbia.
I think what we want to say at this point is that the case is under investigation, so we even don't know as at now whether someone came from out or someone within, so let's leave this to the police.
When you check a loved one into a hospital, the last thing you expect is a call informing you that they have been found murdered in their hospital bed. Tragically, this is exactly what happened to Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta, a brain cancer patient who had been admitted to Kenyatta National Hospital for treatment in 2015 and was later found brutally murdered in his cubicle. Welcome to Silent Shadows. As always, if you appreciate our true crime storytelling, support our fortnightly series by liking and subscribing. Together we uncover compelling tales of crimes and mysteries in Kenya and beyond, presenting well-balanced narratives that respect the victims and their loved ones. In early 2015, 42-year-old Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta was living a relatively normal life. He worked as a procurement manager at Mada Holdings Limited, the holding company for the popular Lamada Hotel in Nairobi. Mutunga had worked in the company for 2 decades, and the job allowed him to adequately provide for his family, since he was the sole breadwinner for his 4 children and his wife, Celestine Mwende Mutunga. The Mutunga family lived comfortably in Imara Daima Estate, Nairobi, and they led a life that seemed ordinary in every way. Sadly, Mutunga's health began to decline in June of 2015, largely due to his long history as a smoker. He started experiencing nasal blockage, headaches, decreased movement in his right eye, and loss of hearing in the right ear. On 14th October 2015, he sought medical attention at Kenyatta National Hospital's Ear, Nose and Throat ENT clinic. At the hospital, he was scheduled for tests 2 days later, on 16th October 2015, to determine what was ailing him. The results confirmed that Mutunga had brain cancer, which had spread and affected his right eye. Mutunga promptly started medical treatment as an outpatient and had frequent follow-up visits at the ENT clinic. Unfortunately, on 5th November 2015, his condition worsened, and he was rushed by his family to the accident and emergency department at Kenyatta Hospital, where the attending doctor diagnosed him with severe anemia and decided to admit him. Mutunga was admitted in Ward 8D, and over the course of about 1.5 weeks, about 15 of his family members donated blood for his treatment. After receiving transfusions, his blood levels improved significantly, and on 18th November 2015, he was set to be transferred to the specialized cancer ward, Ward 8C, for him to start his chemotherapy. Surprisingly, this ward transfer was not solely because Mutunga was going to start his chemotherapy treatment. According to one of his relatives, Mutunga requested the move because he feared for his life. Although Mutunga did not disclose who was threatening him, it's possible that some of his relatives visiting him at the hospital made him feel uneasy, given that he had a land dispute with some of them in his village in Kitui County. Mutunga was then transferred to the specialized cancer ward, 8C, on the 8th floor of the hospital, which housed about 32 patients. He was placed in a cubicle which he shared with 21-year-old Clement Kagondu, who was battling tongue cancer and also had Down syndrome. Clement faced additional challenges including speaking and hearing impairments, which left him unable to hear or speak. Even after he was moved to the specialized cancer ward, Mutunga's family continued to visit him, and on Saturday, 28 February 2015, the day before his tragic death, his wife and brother visited him at the hospital. The two noted that Mutunga was in high spirits and in stable condition. As the visiting hours came to an end at 6 p.m., his wife Celestine and brother Peter said goodbye to Mutunga, who requested that they visit him again the following day. Little did Mutunga know that he would not live to see his family again. As the visitors left, the ward grew silent, marking the start of what seemed to be a routine night at the hospital. The staff on duty that night at the specialized cancer ward, Ward 8C, were Senior Nursing Officer Priscilla Njeru, Senior Enrolled Nurse Godfrey Gashora, Locum Nurse Rosemary Nkonge, and the cleaning lady Mary Kamau. The three nurses on duty that night, Priscilla, Godfrey, and Rosemary, reported that all entrances and exits to Ward 8C were locked at around 12 midnight, now Sunday, 29th February 2015. Later that night, at around 4 a.m., Mutunga's primary nurse, Priscilla Njeru, was doing her rounds in the ward when she went to check on him. She observed that he appeared to be very sick but was breathing well. After taking his temperature, she left the room. 1 hour later, at about 5 a.m., Nurse Priscilla returned to Mutunga's room to administer his morning medication, and she found a horrific scene. There were splashes of blood on the wall next to Mutunga's bed, and he was bleeding heavily, lying in a pool of blood. Priscilla wiped the blood from his face, and it was then that she realized he was not breathing. She immediately called for help from her colleagues Godfrey and Rosemary, who immediately reported the incident to the security control room. What was shocking was that the nurses, who were at the nursing station, did not hear any screams from Mutunga during the attack. Security arrived immediately at Mutunga's room, which was now a crime scene. One thing the security team noticed was a bloody blunt metallic object, a metal bracket, lying next to his bed. They suspected that this metal bracket had been used in the murder. Upon further inspection, they determined that the metal bracket matched those used to support shelves in the wards. This suggested to the security team someone working at the hospital might have been involved in the murder, as the metal bracket was one of 5 similar ones stored in the Ward 8C service store, which was located opposite the nurse's desk. Additionally, the service store was always locked, and the key was kept in one of the drawers at the nursing desk for easy access by clinicians on duty. The police from Kilimani Police Station arrived at the crime scene at 9:30 a.m. and immediately began their investigation by interviewing Clement, the young man who shared a cubicle with Mutunga. Since Clement had a hearing and speaking impairment, his interrogation relied heavily on sign language, with the assistance of his parents and interpreters. During the interrogation, Clement told the police there was a man and a woman in the room during the murder. He said that the man and the woman were dressed in casual clothes, suggesting they were not hospital staff. Clement further described the woman as older, with a heavy physique, and carrying a handbag. He also told the police the young man had removed the metal bracket, which they used to attack Mutunga, from his clothes before brutally taking Mutunga's life. From this interrogation, it was also evident the people who killed Mutunga knew his cubicle mate was deaf and dumb, since they did not even try to cover his mouth to prevent him from screaming. As the police officers were processing the scene of the crime, Mutunga's wife, Celestine, received a call from the Kenyatta National Hospital administration informing her that her husband had been mysteriously attacked. Distressed, she contacted Mutunga's brother, Peter Muthengi Kenyatta, to share the devastating news, and together with other family members, they rushed to the hospital. When they arrived at the hospital around 11 a.m., they were taken to the doctor's office, where the devastating news of Mutunga's death was broken to them. Mutunga's family was then taken to his cubicle in Ward 8C, where they were met with a horrific scene. His wife Celestine even ran away upon laying sight on her deceased husband's body, given the bad shape it was in. After Mutunga's family had viewed his body, Mutunga was transferred to the Kenyatta mortuary, and the family, along with the staff on duty in Ward 8C, including nurses Priscilla, Godfrey, and Rosemary, and the cleaning lady Mary Kamau, headed to Kilimani police station to record statements. The news about Mutunga's death at the biggest hospital in Eastern and Central Africa shocked the country, and the public demanded answers as to what had happened. This prompted Lily Koros, the Kenyatta National Hospital CEO at the time, to release a statement on Monday, 30th November 2015, saying that Mutunga's mysterious death was an isolated case, and the investigations were ongoing. As expected, the investigations into Mutunga's death would go nowhere. 1 week later, on Monday, 7th December 2015, an autopsy was conducted on the late Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta at the Kenyatta National Hospital morgue. According to the autopsy report, Mutunga suffered 42 stab wounds. One of his eyes was also gouged out and his leg broken. Given the extensive injuries Mutunga sustained, the investigators theorized three things. Firstly, the fact that Mutunga did not scream during the attack suggested that he was likely sedated beforehand. As a result, blood samples were taken during the autopsy and sent to the Kenyatta National Hospital lab for testing. However, the results from these tests were never established, as both the hospital administrators and investigators claimed they never received the report. Secondly, the brutal nature in which Mutunga was killed showed that the killing was not a random act of violence. It was personal, indicating that the perpetrators knew Mutunga on a deeply personal level. Therefore, the police grilled Mutunga's family members, and they established that he had a long-standing land dispute with some of his family members in his village. As such, the investigators believed the land dispute was the motive behind Mutunga's brutal murder. Lastly, the police were convinced the murderers had an inside connection at the hospital who assisted in Mutunga's execution. This suspicion arose from several factors, including the fact that Mutunga was allegedly sedated before the attack, most likely with a drug or drugs from the hospital. Also, the murder weapon, a metal bracket, was taken from a store near the nurses' station that was locked and only accessible to the hospital staff. Furthermore, the killers were able to enter and exit the hospital without being detected. Finding the individuals who killed Mutunga would have been easier if there had been CCTV cameras in the wards. However, at the time, the hospital only had cameras on the ground floor, as the administration had chosen not to install the cameras in the wards to avoid infringing on patients' privacy. Unfortunately, as Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta was laid to rest at Mbarani village in Kitui on Saturday, 12 December 2015, not much progress had been made in solving his murder. A glimmer of hope came the following year in late September of 2016 when Kenyatta National Hospital placed the two nurses, Priscilla and Godfrey, and the cleaning lady, Mary Kamau, who were on duty on the night Mutunga was murdered, on interdiction, on grounds of negligence of duty and failure to secure hospital patients. As for the third nurse, Rosemary Nkonge, who was on locum, her services were terminated effective 22nd September 2016. Shortly thereafter, on Friday, 7th October 2016, the four were arrested on suspicion of having been involved in the gruesome death of Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta. The four were arraigned at the Milimani Law Courts 3 days later, on Monday, 10th October 2016, and in a shocking turn of events, as the court proceedings were going on, hundreds of nurses were protesting outside the court, demanding the release of Priscilla, Godfrey, and Rosemary. They claimed that the Kenyatta National Hospital administration were using the nurses as scapegoats, and that the nurses' jobs did not include providing security to patients. The nurses also threatened to hold nationwide protests if their colleagues were not released. The three nurses, Priscilla, Godfrey, and Rosemary, and the support employee Mary Kamau, would later be released on Monday, 14th November 2016, on a 300,000 Kenyan shillings bail each, which is approximately $2,300 USD by today's exchange rates. The ruling judge, Justice Jesse Lesit, ordered them to report to Kilimani police station every 2 weeks, with the 4 suspects out on bail and public pressure mounting on both the Kenyatta National Hospital administration and the police to solve Mutunga's murder. A parliamentary committee was formed in late 2016 to investigate the case. Chaired by Dr. Rachel Nyamai, the Member of Parliament for Kitui South, the committee visited the crime scene and questioned the hospital administration, which was led by Lily Koros, the CEO of the hospital at the time. Interestingly, during the parliamentary hearing, the CEO claimed that Kenyatta National Hospital was not liable for Mutunga's death. She also alleged that Mutunga's family members were seeking compensation from the hospital and were not concerned with the criminal aspect of their relative's murder. After the committee had concluded the investigations, they tabled their final report in February of 2017, outlining their findings and recommendations. The report's main finding stated the obvious. That is, given that the murder weapon used to kill Mutunga had been an item stored within the hospital, pointed to the fact that a staff member at the hospital had helped the assailants in killing Mutunga. Mutunga's case would unfortunately hit a dead end despite the investigations by the police, the Kenyatta National Hospital Internal Security Team, and the Parliament Committee. The case eventually came to an end on Monday, 20th May 2019, when Judge Justice Lesit ruled to lift the previous probation, preventing the 4 suspects, Priscilla, Godfrey, Rosemary, and Mary Kamau, from visiting the hospital. This was after the Kenyatta National Hospital wrote a letter to the Milimani law courts, noting that they had lifted the interdiction on Priscilla, Godfrey, and Mary, and had renewed Rosemary's contract. The nurses and the cleaning lady resumed their jobs at the hospital, and this was the last of Mutunga's case in court. There is a likelihood, although not proven, that the hospital settled with Mutunga's family out of court, and since the prosecution did not have an airtight case as to the nurses' involvement in the murder, the case was dropped. Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta's murder is puzzling to say the least, and 2 questions still linger. Who killed him? And what role did the Kenyatta National Hospital staff play in the murder? We may never know what happened on that night, but from the information we have, we can put forward 2 theories. Firstly, assuming Mutunga's killers were his relatives, we can theorize that they likely got to know one of the nurses during their visits to the hospital to see Mutunga. They may have approached this nurse with an offer to assist in killing Mutunga for a fee. After they struck the deal, another likelihood is that the killers may have entered the hospital between 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. We suggest this time window because the night shift staff clock in at 5:30 p.m. and evening visiting hours end at 6 p.m. This time period would have been ideal as the night shift nurse who allegedly assisted them would have been present to help them hide until the time was ripe for them to strike. Additionally, during this time, the presence of the 2 killers would not have raised suspicion since it was still visiting hours. Once inside the hospital with the help of the nurse, the killers could have hidden in one of the 3 rooms near Mutunga's cubicle that were least frequented during the night shift. That is the linen store, the washrooms, or the area where dead bodies were stored in the interim before being moved to the mortuary. They would have hidden in one of these areas until the staff member informed them of the opportune moment to strike. This would have been after the said staff member had sedated Mutunga. Additionally, the killers likely chose to strike just before the end of the night shift because it would have been easier for them to leave the hospital unnoticed, pretending to be staff members finishing their shift, thus avoiding suspicion. The second theory could be that one of the hospital staff members sneaked the 2 killers into the wards in the dead of the night. This would have been possible because Although there were security guards at the hospital who patrolled the wards, there were not enough of them to sufficiently cover every nook and cranny of the large hospital. This means that, with some areas of the hospital left unguarded, one of the staff members could have sedated Mutunga, sneaked the killers into the hospital undetected, handed them the murder weapon from the service store near the nurses' station, and helped them sneak out after they had done the dirty deed. Let us know in the comments what you think happened. Even after Mutunga's tragic death at the Kenyatta National Hospital, concerns about patient safety at the hospital have persisted over the years. For instance, in March of 2018, a neurosurgeon at the hospital performed brain surgery on the wrong patient. Also in the same year, there were disturbing allegations that new mothers were assaulted while they went to breastfeed their babies at night in the nursery. These incidents paint a picture of a hospital where the quality of patient care has continued to deteriorate, largely due to poor management and systemic rot, including corruption, where funds that should go into improving security at the hospital have been diverted into people's pockets. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta. May his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Thank you for joining us today. If you appreciated this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be notified when the next video is up. Until then, please take care, stay safe, and always trust your gut.